All right. I now call to order our December council meeting. I ask you to join me in a moment of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. Thank you for this wonderful season, the season of lights. And thank you, Father, for everything it means. We thank you for the triumphs and the challenges of the past several years, and any that may confront us tonight. Father, be with us tonight as we continue to make decisions that affect the people of this great community. And none of this would be possible without your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ, whose birthday we celebrate later this month. Amen. Amen. We now invite you to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's good to see everybody here tonight in the spirit of Christmas. And I see that we have a short agenda, so maybe we'll be like that old Christmas carol, I'll be home for kickoff.
You practiced that?
I did. I rehearsed. The hours I put into that, I didn't get the effect. We have 3 hearings tonight, pretty standard, and we'll just go. I'll call us into public hearing. We have a check policy. Will be hearing number 1. And Mr. Norbeck, I believe in general terms, this policy would allow the town to charge $50 for a return bad check.
It would allow us to do that.
Right.
And I told you incorrectly the other day.
Okay.
It is, the proposed ordinance does allow the town to increase. However, what was advertised and what was available and what the committee looked at was leaving it at $35. Okay, I know I told you the 50. That was in my area.
Okay.
It is $35, so we're not proposing to change the fees. We're only proposing to basically set a number of bad checks during a certain period of time, which would be 2 checks in any 24-month period.
Okay.
Okay.
If that time, let's say I submit a 3rd check that's bad within 24 months, or even a second one within 24 months, the treasurer will have the option to require cash or money order for payment. Correct. Very good.
There are a couple additional, the Finance Committee committee met today, and I think where there are some mays, the committee had some interest in putting in shalls so that there's not that level of discretion. So you did it for one, you didn't do for
Shall is
everybody.
clear.
I think we want to do shall on a couple places, and I'll read those to you.
Okay.
What was proposed by the Finance Committee. It currently says the treasurer is authorized to collect a fee in the amount established by the town council, and I think it was the committee's intention to change that. Instead of authorized, they'd like to make it shall collect a fee. And then if you go to the last sentence on the policy, it says the treasurer may also refuse to accept checks, and I think the committee would like to make that shall refuse to accept checks.
Those changes are duly noted and will probably be included in any motion that's made before council. At this time, anyone in the audience to speak for or against the proposed policy? Seeing and hearing none, members of council, what's your pleasure?
I move that we approve the check policy with the changes designated by the town manager that we have before us in the council.
Mr. Green has moved. Is there a second? Mr. Moncur, second. Any questions or discussion? Because it's a policy, I will ask for a roll call vote. I believe tonight we start with Ms. Thompson, don't we? President Thompson?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. The other hearing is on a policy that basically puts into writing that which we currently do, correct?
It does, and it's for commercial and residential connections. However, what we have added is, and I don't know of a situation where this would apply, but in discussing it with Dan, we do want to make it on the residential side, because currently if you hook up a single-family home, there is no cost, which is radically different than what you may see outside the town limits with competing carriers or competing providers. Anything over 300 feet by this policy for a residential connection, that the cost for construction would be applied to the homeowner. I don't think there's very many circumstances in Blackstone, but that is new, and that was added to this. Everything else should pretty much reflect what we're already doing.
Okay. Very good. Well, we're in public hearing. Anyone from the public like to speak for or against this policy, which is not earth-shattering, but it does put into writing that which we normally have been practicing and will practice? Hearing none and seeing none, members of council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve of the policy and guidelines for electric service.
Is there a second to Mr. Nash's motion? Second. Mr. Scott is second. Any further discussion? Have a roll call vote, starting with President Thompson.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. And last but certainly not least, we've discussed this quite a bit, and this is a hearing on an itinerant merchant peddler's license regarding the location where they can set up. Mr. Norbeck.
And I think the gist of this one here is that on town-owned right-of-ways, which are the public streets, okay, within the historic business district, a map of which is attached, and trying to determine where this is most appropriate, I think that was I think Mr. Nash had come up with that. That was kind of a resolution to prevent food carts or other peddlers from just pulling up on Main Street and setting up in front of one of our brick and mortar vendors. We didn't want to prevent it anywhere in town, so there are business districts where they can do it, the shopping center or Louis Donito's Medical Center property, the logical places.
For your record, the side where we park our
You
cars.
guys are outside of the historic business district, so there are areas that it can be set up on the right-of-way, but they have to be outside the historic business district, not the historic district, and there is a differentiation between the two, and any town-owned property. So the ice cream truck probably shouldn't pull in at Wigglesworth. It can stay on the right-of-way, but it shouldn't pull onto any town-owned property in the town of Blackstone, okay? Those are the biggies.
Okay. Anyone in the audience to speak for or against this proposed policy? Seeing and hearing none, members of council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second to Mr. Green's motion, Mr. Moncur. Any further discussion?
It is the understanding that certain events, arts and crafts, are exempt from this.
Like with donuts, the Yoder's Donuts lady, would they,
Yoder's Donuts.
she sets up in the
No.
municipal parking lot.
I don't think that's specifically exempted, because that's at Christmas time, and I think that they have certain things, and that's in the municipal parking lot, and they have.
That one, not, but the arts and crafts definitely. I mean, you've
Arts
got,
and crafts, I think, is understood that it's a special event, unless the council would like to specifically exempt, I don't think Yoder's would be exempted.
How about the ones that set up on the, well, like I say, where most of the vendors are, arts and crafts, is High Street in the town right away, so that would,
Yeah.
that's historic business district?
I
that
believe it
is
is.
correct.
It sure is.
I think the
That's the
armory
only
is in
reason that
there.
one needs to be
But I think you guys can make exceptions for certain events.
You could amend the policy, could someone amend the motion to include exceptions through the town managers approved by council in advance for special events such as festivals and Christmas time?
So moved.
Well, who made the motion? Mr. Green made the motion. Would you be willing to amend the motion for the?
Certainly.
All right, Mr. Green's amended the motion. Mr. Nash, you still second? Mr. McCure? Any further discussion? Roll call vote, starting with President Thompson. That also carries 7-0. At this time, we have a section for visitors. I didn't see where anyone signed up. Anyone would like to address council tonight? I know we have some visitors here just a few minutes later on in the agenda. Any visitors? It's definitely Christmas. We'll move right along to your minutes. Did someone else? We'll go to our minutes of your last few council meetings.
Move to dispense with the reading of November 20th council minutes.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Nash's motion? Mr. Tucker has seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Fire chief's report. Chief Tillman, we may be setting a record at 7:09. I don't know if you ever addressed us this early.
Be able to eat dinner. Under new business for us, we had the fundraising event for Tanner on Saturday. It was an amazing success. We did right over $5,000 that we were able to give the family between the three organizations that did the fundraiser. So it was a spectacular event, and we certainly sold out of everything. Christmas banquet was held on the 9th. Thank you those who came. Awards are listed of interest. Buzz Bryant received his 30-year award this year. Part 3 was the bell. I don't know if y'all saw on Facebook, but our bell off the 1948 La France was donated back to us in pristine condition, minus a little crack, but not on the bell itself, on the eagle. But it's an honor to have that back. Maybe one day the 48 will be remodeled, but we have a 36 that we're working on first. So, and that's it, unless anyone has anything.
Any questions for Chief Tillman?
I had an illness in the family. I deeply regret missing the banquet. I always enjoy that.
It was a good
Family
time to have
member.
Al.
Very
Family
good.
member was ill, sorry.
And the blankets are
Thank you.
on behalf
thank
of the
you.
department.
Thank you.
We usually don't need the blankets here. It gets usually a little hot up here,
Yeah,
but
it's
we
not on my
definitely
feet.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, and y'all have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, we have payment of bills in your packet. Our first batch totals $562,817.08. Those are checks not yet approved.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the payment. Any questions about any particular line items? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Thompson.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. And the second batch of bills totals $258,328.04.
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Ms. Thompson, the second that motion. These are the accounts to be paid.
Ms. Hardy is looking.
Yes.
Judd and I met earlier today, and there's a couple I didn't add reimbursements to.
Okay.
The CMP Enterprise, that is for the lawn, code enforcement, so that's reimbursable, and then on page 3, the dumpsters and the landfill charge are both reimbursable.
Okay. That landfill charge is mighty high. That's,
Pass through the charge.
gotcha, okay. All right, thank you very much.
I didn't see anything else, well, when we met of any consequence, if anyone else did. Did you see anything?
I do under litter grant. What are the recycle bins? Under page 3.
Yes, they sit in your office.
Oh,
Blue
okay.
bins that you put under your desk or whatever. And they're paid with a grant.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll ask.
I-
Oh, go right ahead, go right ahead.
Under cemetery, you got Simmons Monument, repair to monument. Is that a pass-through? It should be I would think a perpetual care.
No, we can't touch perpetual care. It has to be out of the operating fund of the cemetery.
Which is not there.
I think we just make a lump sum
Okay.
transfer from the cemetery fund to the operating fund to pay salaries every year. I think $15,000 we pull it up. But we transfer a lump sum and then pay some of those invoices out of it. So I can't say it's truly a
pass-through.
reimbursable or pass-through.
Just standard repair, did something happen, or just standard maintenance?
Like
Okay.
those that get leaned to them or maybe hit by a lawnmower or something like that. And we need to usually put together 5 or 6 and there's still more to do.
All right, any further questions? Denny's McDonald's. I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with President Thompson. Very good, that motion carries 7-0. We now have only one committee report. I see Account and Finance on the agenda.
Yes, sir. Account and Finance met on the 14th, and they also met today. We took on a couple of issues. Council authorized us to seek bids for $2 million for a certificate of deposit. And also, we discussed funding for the church, what do we say we call
East
it?
End.
East End project. Was a little bit of confusion and a little bit of a lot about nothing. But basically, what we've come up with is that we are a little bit ahead of ourselves talking about funding, and we don't even have drawings yet. So we're premature talking about the funding. There's been some talk that we may be fiscally strong enough to just finance it ourselves, pay ourselves back. But at this point, we don't even have drawings. So Finance Committee recommends that council takes that up at a time when we have a price and we have drawings and we know exactly what the project's gonna be. So that's the first part, that's the first portion.
Just to keep it clean here, if we could, council did vote 7-0 at its November meeting or actually October meeting, to seek bids, proposals on a $1.1 million loan.
So I move that we rescind that motion.
Okay, is there a second, Mr. Greens, to rescind that?
Second.
All right, Mr. Nash, a second. Any further discussion? And just members of council, in case you're maybe moving fast, the council acted 7-0, so I felt it was appropriate that if council, it would be a council decision to no longer seek the loan. And so that's what the motion
You
is
are
tonight.
acting
The main reason
properly.
Philip explained, we don't currently have an architect or
Right, drawings.
engineers.
What-
It's expired. we
Yes,
need
so
We're
they're doing interviews for that.
premature.
Okay.
No, ma'am. We really hadn't started. We were gonna get bids for the money, but we don't even know we haven't got far enough to that point to
Okay.
talk about the money.
All right, so I will ask for a voice vote. All in favor of Mr. Green's motion to no longer at this time pursue loan or financing for East End. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
The second,
And to make it clear, that's only because it sounds kind of, not the way you put it, but just so the East End people know that we're still gonna do the project.
Yeah, the grant is being pursued, it's just the fact that we're not, the council at this time thinks it's premature to go out and borrow a bunch of money.
Until we get drawn.
well, the grant, we were gonna reapply for the grant, but if we're not successful, one way or another, we're gonna repair those water lines.
Council has said it's, that's correct.
Right, so that's that, but
All right.
we're just a little premature, we're a couple of months ahead of time. And finance will get back, when the manager has drawings and the manager's ready, we'll come back, ask the council, which way do we wanna go? Do we wanna borrow the money, do we wanna pay for it in cash, or how do we wanna do it? We'll go from there.
Okay.
The second component that the committee took upon was a certificate of deposit for $2 million, which we have in reserve. At that meeting, we were presented with the bids, and I'll be honest with you, there was some confusion, and I asked for the people in the room, the bankers in the room, would they mind resubmitting? And we made our terms clear that the interest was available for penalty, but not the principal. We cannot have taxpayers' principal be degraded in any way, shape, form. And that we were interested in, also, a suggestion came up from one of the bankers that we could actually borrow against those funds if we had a catastrophe. For instance, if we had an $800,000 problem that VML would cover, I don't think the citizens want to wait 3 or 4 weeks till we get the check. We need to go and put the light poles back up. So that's what we did. And as it worked out, the same bank came back and had the highest bid, which was Benchmark Bank, Benchmark Community Bank here in Blackstone, at a rate of 1.95% for 36 months. So we have the funds available. These funds are now sitting in a local bank at 0.3%. And the difference is 1.65% or $2,750 a month in interest by being parked there. So I move that we award Benchmark Community Bank with the $2 million CD for a period of 36 months at 1.95%.
Is this a recommendation by the Finance Committee?
2-1.
Was that today?
Yes, sir. 2-1.
Okay. Mr. Green has made a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Tucker has seconded. Any discussion by members of council? What was the no vote? Who voted no?
I did, simply because, as everybody on the committee and everybody acknowledged that it was confusing. It was just, we went out and just got, and Philip did it under our, I guess you'd say, we told him to do it.
I asked y'all to look at
Yeah,
it.
so it's not his fault, but on the finance committee's behalf, I think, so now we're going from a $2 million CD, we went to a 1.5, now we're going back to $2 million, and that was my only thing. I said, you know what, don't do it in haste. That was the only reason I sent it.
Right.
Well, I don't feel there's any haste in saving the taxpayers $2,750 a month.
Well, and my other
So-
reason was, this was not in the council packet for council members to actually see it.
Yeah, is there any paperwork on any of the,
Yeah.
and just to be clear, I like to state this every so often it comes up. I am on the board of directors of Citizens Bank and Trust Company. I've had no input whatsoever to any proposals or any rates that have been put in front of me. I would also want to apologize to staff and the council when in the back of my mind, I knew in October, I believe a vote was made. I believe Mr. Nash made the motion to seek RPs on the loan piece, I believe. And at that time, I said to myself, I ought to make Mr. Nash put in his motion that usually when you say RFP proposals, for me, it is basically the town submits in writing either through an advertisement in the local paper or through direct contact with institutions what it is the town is seeking. And then, I'm kind of old school. I believe in kind of the sealed bid at the 12 o'clock noon. You open the bids in public, and that did not happen. And so, what little I have heard does seem to be a little confusion. I did watch some of the finance committee video, and I do remember the last I heard, I didn't get through all of it, was a 1.5 million CD with the option to 36 months with the option to borrow against it,
$1 million.
preferably about a point or something gap. I think I did that when I.
Well,
Right.
in the event we were to borrow another $1 million, would they do it for 1% on top?
That would eliminate the problem of us degrading any
Principal.
principal.
Correct,
Which I don't think we have the authority to do. We can't we
I
cannot
think the
give that.
law, yeah, I think the law, in fact, I asked the county administrator one time about, this was back in the 90s when the stock market was going great. Had the county ever thought about investing in some mutual funds or something that was quote unquote safe? And I was told that local governments can't invest where principal could be in jeopardy. There's like a law about that.
Well, I made a comment today I want to share with you to the finance committee, and I'll share it with the council. What the council has done in the last 8 years is phenomenal. It's probably unprecedented in the Commonwealth. To go from speaking of unscrewing light bulbs and employees not knowing whether or not they were going to get a paycheck, to have over $4 million in the local bank today. Obviously, that comes with tremendous growing pains. And we have made some mistakes, and we are codifying, our check policy. We're getting better and better. But with this kind of rapid growth, we're gonna have a few hiccups. And so I did not handle this the way it should have. I got a little indigestion and didn't handle it right. But the fact of the matter is, twice we asked for bids, and twice we had a high bidder. And we're talking about a savings of, $30,000 a year just by moving the funds, and I don't see belaboring the point. So that's what I wanted to say. We don't need to kick ourselves. We made a mistake, and we just need to move on.
How do the other members of council feel about this?
Mr. Mayor, is this a legal move to have this done twice since Texas sitting here? You had the meeting the first time, and then you re-advertised it?
There was a meeting on the last Thursday. I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday, then a meeting,
Thursdays.
and then another meeting today, I believe.
I'll do my best if I can. After talking to Tessie on Friday about the matter, and I guess being confirmed that the 1.95% rate was the highest of both bids, I think talking to Tessie, I said, what do we do if we don't accept this? What do we got to go through? If you remember Nottoway Avenue, we had a low bidder who said, ooh, my bid is not
They were not responsive bidders.
responsive bidder.
Responsible. They were
So we
responsible.
have to either accept the initial proposal, or we need to declare Benchmark's proposal to be unresponsive. And I don't know if we have that from the first proposal.
Does
And-
council, and again, I'm going to admit, for all those watching on video especially, because not a big crowd, I am treading on some dangerous ground here. But is council obligated, whenever it issues RFP for tires, is it obligated to, I always, again, old school, council reserves the right to reject any and all bids? Is there anything that says, okay, you've done an RFP, as informal as it may have been, you've got to go with the high bidder? I'm just curious.
Well, I think that one factor would be it would depend on what the advertisement actually said.
There was no advertisement here, from my understanding. There was never anything in writing, and that's my fault. I don't believe. Now, if I'm wrong, forgive me.
My thought about it is if there was not a change in circumstances whereby, I'm trying to think of the correct way to put this, but basically, if the town advertised for it, the town is going to do it, and there are responsive and responsible bidders, then the town would be bound by those bids unless the town would declare it as responsive or responsible.
Could the town, hypothetically speaking, declare its process maybe not the most responsible as it could be? And again, I start with the top being my fault. I don't believe there was anything ever issued in writing from the get-go to any financial institutions. Would that be grounds, just as a mayor who's hypersensitive about process and appearances, would that be out of bounds to say, listen, there's news that there could be and this gets into banking and finance, but there's rising rate environments, maybe next quarter it could be more.
We did receive responses to the advertisement in writing, so it got out there some kind of way.
How did the town issue its RFP?
Contacted all the banks, personally requested the information.
Were they given the same information?
The second RFP, which this is where my confusion came, was because I don't know which one we're actually accepting, the first RFP or the second RFP.
The first one. The second one, we shouldn't have done. I said, that's my error.
But the second one is when it was all spelled out, because we had all the lenders in here, and we told them what we wanted on that CD.
1.5,
We said
1.5.
1.5, 36 months, we don't want no 12 months, 24 months, penalty free, all that. We just want a straight 36-month CD, 1.5 million, give us your best rate. And all of them were in here, they heard it, everybody was here.
Right.
So-
One thing also, and I'll let council speak some, don't want to hog the floor, especially on this issue. The town manager was quite adamant, as was Mr. Green, I believe, last month, about a lot of times when you have CD products, the old commercials will be substantial penalty for early withdrawal, that sort of thing. Are these items that y'all received, do they not have penalty or
Principal, man.
on principle? But there's a penalty for early withdrawal.
Penalty on the interest,
Okay.
but not on the principal.
Okay.
Made it abundantly clear to everybody. Can't
All right.
And may I asterisk my response
Yes.
with? I did not, when I, researched this issue and talked to Philip about it, it wasn't a question about, whether or not the process was defective to get at that question. And then number two, it really wasn't a question about, a blanket, does town council have the general right to reject or accept the bid?
Yeah,
So, as an asterisk, my response to Philip was just based on the fact of, we got a responsive and responsible bidder, we rebidded, and is this acceptable? And I said, if you have a responsive and responsible bidder, you're rebidding the same thing. My advice is, that you should accept the responsive and responsible bidder. And then it was limited to that. So I did not specifically get into the questions that you asked.
Just generally speaking, Ms. Bacon, as a rule, you find it better or not better for local governments when they're seeking services or seeking to buy things to not put it in writing?
May I ask a question?
Yes. I'm a big written guy. I just believe in the written word.
But
Yeah.
I've gone out and gotten bids a dozen times since I've been here. Haven't written any of them up.
But didn't we done,
This time.
right, and in the past you haven't, and one of the reasons why I did not in October question Mr. Nash's motion, because I remember not too long ago, thanks to, I think, Jennifer Hardy, the council adopted a procurement policy, which now requires, like, there's certain things where you can make phone calls, and then, certain things require writing, and I just didn't know, and I don't know the answer to this. Does that procurement policy have a policy on financial instruments? Might this council want to revisit that in the future?
We discussed that we were going to work on a procurement project, a procurement policy for financial vehicles,
Okay.
and present it to council.
Okay.
I would rather, in the future, tell you the truth, I know this is gonna fall out of favor with many on council, but as I told Bill Collins and Joe at their office one day, I'm not a pro at this. I need their assistance as a relationship. Help me, give me some ideas, what are the best way to handle this for the town? And clearly it's fallen in disfavor because some folks don't like the process or the results, and I get all that. But at the end of the day, everybody went in this with good faith in the same thing. Now, do they like the way, or do certain banks like the way the lending was done? It was apples to apples, or apples to oranges. It's clearly everybody's proposal is different, but I specifically said, give me a proposal, tell me what's best for the town. How do we handle this debt? But CDs, I think, are pretty cut and dry. I don't think that there's a lot of gray area with the CD.
Right.
Okay? My recommendation to Sam and previously was to use Davenport from this point forward. Just let Davenport bid it out. But I assure you, what happens when Davenport handles it,
You gonna pay for it?
we borrow money in Mississippi. That's not keeping it local. If we use a consultant to put a broad RFP on the street, which is really how logically it should be done, okay? And it's been successful for us in the past. We've gotten the best rates, we've gotten the best deals on the lending. The local environment is just not gonna be there. The guys they may bid on it, they may get it, I don't know, but last project Davenport put out was $2.5 million we borrowed from a bank in Biloxi, Mississippi. I don't think that's the intention of this board, certainly not my intention, because we can go out as a bond on this thing. We can do it through the Virginia Resources Authority, we can do it on a multiple number of vehicles, but the closing costs are gonna be substantial, be 5-10% of closing costs on the project. I understand the lending, and if it's not satisfactory, we can wait, we can do whatever, we can get an engineer and all that, but I don't think the CDs, there was any confusion on the CDs.
Well, that's where, on the first proposal that we asked for, was for the $2 million, and that was also tied with the loan though, so,
The first time,
for the first time. I mean,
they were separate items altogether.
were they separate?
They were separate.
All the rates were.
Would they bid at the
completely-
same time, or like They were not,
I went to all the banks and asked them for the rate on the lending, okay? And in the meantime, we discussed the money market rate that we were receiving was low, and we would like to get the bids on that. I did not know, as I've been told by Joe, that their proposal on the lending was based on how much money there was in the bank. I don't know that. Again, that's why Davenport needs to be doing this, or we need to be paying a pro to do this kind of stuff. I'm not good at it, and they were not tied to one another, okay? They were not tied to one another. Now, if you get $2 million in your bank and you're making a proposal, maybe that affects your rates, as has
Correct.
been explained to me by Joe and Bill, but that was not my intention when I went to them. They went to them at 2 separate times. In fact, I went to Bill for the lending, came back to see him later, and spoke to April Long, who gave me the rate for the CD.
again, and please don't misinterpret these comments. I'm not, as mayor, results don't concern me as much as process. Is the council comfortable with how this process went from start to finish?
I would have some problem with it if we didn't receive written, we received written proposals from the banks twice. And both times, there's no ambiguity, both times Benchmark had the best rate, still have the best rate.
Right.
So if you want to make an argument that we didn't put it out right, well, it came back right. So, I mean, we're not talking about, we're talking about straight, cut and dry. They hold our money, they pay us a certain amount of interest rate. It's just so, but it's $2,750 a month more money for the taxpayer. We sit up here and had hour-long debates about 0.5% on electric rate,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
Do remember that.
I mean, this is well overdone.
Any other members of council have any comments or concerns?
One other question I have, this will be it, is that, what happens to the interest that's, this $2 million is accumulated monthly, quarterly, is that APY, what is this? What are you gonna, where's the interest
I
going?
have to
Back
read
to
the
the
proposal to see how it, but the intention is to leave it in the accounts and let it accrue into the account. There was no intention or no specific plan to take it out. Perhaps upon maturity, you can make a decision, but it would stay
Absolutely,
otherwise.
absolutely.
For the money.
The finance committee would like to see us be fair with all these banks, and anytime there's any, a certain amount of money, which I think we've talked about this ad nauseum tonight, but maybe in the first of the year, we come up with a proposal that a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time we should bid out, but I think we've had enough of this for one night, over a simple, to me, a very simple issue.
I have one other question. So just so we're clear, the council is being asked to vote on the
I think I made a motion.
$2 million?
$2 million.
Okay.
1.95% for 36 months with Benchmark Community Bank.
And the motion was seconded by Mr. Tucker.
That it was.
Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Council President Thompson.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, any other committee reports at this time? Hearing none, unfinished business number 1, surface treatment. These are sealed bids we're gonna award now.
As you know, last month we awarded Colony Construction asphalt patching and slurry seal, I think either last month or perhaps the month before, some sealing contracts on primary roads like North Main, Nottoway Avenue, and Pickett Court. This bid is for tar and gravel, which we use typically on secondary streets. The streets that are specifically going to be dealt with are in Barber's District, Tunstall Avenue, Merchant Street, 4th Street, Gravett Avenue, those kinds of sections. In addition, 2nd and 3rd Street south of Church Street, and additionally to that, Beechcliff, Westwood Drive, College Road, I guess, and there is a list of streets to be done. We're bouncing a little bit more than I would like, but we had to pull Fall Street and Luke Street and Amelia Avenue out because I anticipate some sewer improvements on those streets. If we can get them done in time, then we can go back and do the tar and gravel. It's a small package. It's only 45,000 square yards. We sought sealed bids, received 3 bids back. The low bid is $1.90 a square yard, and that is from Whitehurst Construction, who are the same folks that did it this year.
How in the world can it be such a broad? I know. to 689.
689, I think was, I don't want to speak for the guys that, they hadn't bid on it before. Landco and Whitehurst are larger companies that typically do this kind of work.
Is there a list of streets that,
I don't think I have it in the packet, but I'd be more than happy to give it to you. It's primarily Barbara's district, though.
does council feel that the low bidder is responsive?
They've worked for us before, correct?
They did it this
Just want to make sure,
Landco's had it 1 year, and since I've been doing it after Jack left, I think this is the 3rd year that Whitehurst has had it.
Members of council, what's your pleasure?
I move to approve this low bid with Whitehurst paving at $1.90 a square yard. Second.
Mr. Scott has seconded because, would it go over $10,000 possibly?
It's 85,000.
Oh, yeah, this is gonna be,
I didn't, okay. I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Green, Ms. Thompson. That motion carries 7-0. Ongoing projects. We have some Maben Avenue news.
as you know, there is a house on Maven Avenue that has been in a state of disrepair probably for 5 years or thereabouts. Tessie and I and Jennifer Daniel attended circuit court last week, I believe on the 11th of December. We requested an order be issued for the house to be demolished. We did agree with Mr. Allen, as Harrison Allen is the owner of the property. He's been notified ad nauseum about the condition. We did agree, and there's a letter in there that Tessie sent to him with 3 benchmarks. The first of which that within 30 days of the order being issued, that he would make the building, I guess, safe. It would not be in a dangerous condition, and up to 90 days where he would have an issuance of a certificate of occupancy. If any of those 3 benchmarks aren't met, then the town reserves the right to go ahead and demolish the property.
And I am meeting, me and the building inspector and Mr. Allen are meeting at 9:30 in the morning at the property, so he will know what his first 30 days are supposed to be.
Okay.
While we're, well, you probably need to take care of this. Do you need a vote? No.
I think
FYI.
There's a house on Church Street. Obviously, you've been working on Church Street to fix it up, and it was not a house, it's the old funeral home, I believe.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
hole in the roof, yeah.
It's a pretty large hole.
We need to take it on. Holes in roofs are problems. We have a school building that has
We have a new building inspector.
equivalent types holes, and that funeral home on Church Street certainly needs to be looked at. The greenhouse on Church Street needs to be looked at. There is a house, just so you guys know, we've been approached on Fall Street, and the building inspector has condemned the house, and I think the fire department's agreeable to do the controlled burn as long as we provide them with an asbestos certificate. So we'll be slowly working our way through that one as well.
To me, it's fairness. I mean, I'm all.
Sure, there's a bunch of them.
It's Maven Avenue. If Mr. Allen is getting slammed for it, I think the others, including the school, I'll say it.
Yeah, but do keep in mind, we started with Mr. Allen about 11 months ago. We've been at that one a
Those homes were
while.
discussed in 2002, when they were
Yeah.
boarded up. That's informational, correct? Mr.
Information.
Green had an item on Finance Committee he wants to bring up, he forgot to bring up.
I was remiss, and we had one more issue, and it involves the Leo's benefit for the police officers. We have, and help me out here, after that discussion about this last issue, help me out with the numbers. I think we budgeted $45,000 this
We
year
did.
for Leo's.
Correct.
And I think it came in close to 70.
69,000.
Well, I'm better than I thought. Finance Committee met today, and we make a motion to council, 3-0, recommending that we start the Leo's program January 1st of 2018. The money that we have in there will more than cover the 6 months, and then it will need to be addressed in the next budget. So I offer that in the form of a motion that we move forward and implement the Leo's benefits for our fine police officers as soon as possible.
Is there a second to Mr. Green's motion?
Second.
Just a clarification, that's $70,000, that sum is arrived by deducting pre-tax from officer, or adding to their pre.
I'm gonna love to tell you I know exactly how this actuarial
Right.
system works, but they do, and Jennifer's probably far wiser than I, and if you have specific questions, she can provide them probably better than I, but we had a conference call with them today. It is actually based on the retirement of all of our employees, believe it or not, even though there are only 12 that will actually receive the benefit. We went from 43,000 to 69 because in 2011, the last time we did the study, in anticipation of perhaps doing Leo's, we only had 9 police officers. Okay? And in 2017, we have 12 police officers. It is more expensive by about $1,000 per employee, but there's also 3 additional employees. Okay? And it's based on, hybrid levels, type 1 employees. Dan Martin's probably a type 1. He's been here long enough. And the retirement system has changed over the years. When I started, I was a type 1, and then now I'm maybe a level 2, and then there's a hybrid type. And the calculation was based on the number of employees and what type of retirement they're receiving across the board, including all the town's employees. And save me, Jennifer, if there's something else that I need to.
Well,
Jennifer did find out that it will not be the $69,000 next year. It will only be 55.
So instead, because a lot of times these retirement things, they escalate and they snowball.
It could go down, it
The
could go
cost
up.
could go down. But that's odd to me. Our police officer Leo's program must be based on other town employees who
All
will actually get
retirement.
benefit.
They have to look at us as a pool.
Okay.
It's VRS as a whole, and we're adding a benefit. Now, that benefit only is eligible for 12.
Okay.
But they still have to look at our salaries as a whole and our contribution as a whole. That's the only way they can look at it. But they
Okay.
look at police salaries, how long they've worked, mortality rates, they have all these factors that come into play.
If you have an older workforce, if
Very
you have
good.
older police officers, obviously your rate goes up.
Well, by starting January 1st, you'll actually probably spend less than the 45,000 you budgeted. You'll spend 35,000 probably.
At the max.
I think there's a significant decrease in the $69,000 for next fiscal year. And remember, we're only doing a half a year, so we won't spend the full 69. We anticipate spending half of that from January to July. And then next fiscal year, we already know that our retirement rates are dramatically going to decrease on the town's contribution. Okay? So the net effect to the town, beginning July 1, will only be about $10,000
It's-
additional cost to
Pay a
provide
third-
Leos.
We pay a third of what we're
It's
paying
a-
this year.
it's going down-
Right? From 3 to 1%, something like that?
Well, 3.6 to about 1.09,
Yeah,
so maybe
well,
a little
actually,
more.
almost a fourth.
So
Our match will be,
to provide
Fourth.
Leos next fiscal year, the net, and that's only one fiscal year because the conditions could change, it's like health insurance. But for the following fiscal year, the net effect is about a $10,000 increase, not a $69,000 increase.
Very good. We've got a motion that's been made. It's been seconded. All right. I'm a roll call. Any other discussion?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0 with one
one
abstention.
more item.
Yes.
Will you take the podium, please? I'd like our finance director to brief the council on what she's been doing with meals tax. And
Okay.
She did a wonderful job.
So I finished my meals tax study. There was a general consensus with the restaurants that they were a little confused on what kind of documentation to have for tax exempt sales. I was in contact with the Virginia State auditors, and they kind of told me the process. If there's confusion and they don't have the proper documentation, the first audit, you waive it. You let them claim it. You give them the information, you give them the proper documentation. Per council's direction, I held a workshop. No one attended, but the Virginia State Auditor and the Treasurer, which we utilized that day. We racked his brain for audit processes, sales tax reporting. It wasn't a waste, but no restaurants received the information that they need to move forward because they need this information. I am gonna send a letter out certified with the packet, but
How do we stand though as far as, at one time we had the number down to like 2 or 3 that were quote unquote not fully compliant. Is that number still there?
everyone complied.
Okay.
They gave me their documentation. There was still some gray areas as far as their tax exempt sales.
I guess the point is, Mayor, is we had some people complaining that they didn't understand, and we made an all-out effort to have an arena for them to come and to understand, and we didn't have any participation, so
And it wasn't to catch them, it was to teach
to
them.
It was
keep
purely
from having a problem.
informational PowerPoint packets.
I
The
think there
Virginia
was,
State Auditor
when I
attended.
initially brought this up, there was some reaction that I was out to get any particular merchant. It was the absolute opposite, that I wanted to do what we did here, where they knew and were provided information, and we actually have state people that they could call and ask and confer with. And you found this auditor to be very accommodating, so it's just,
Thank you for your efforts, sir.
it's sad, but I wanted you to know the efforts that's
Absolutely.
being made in the finance department here. Job well done,
Very
thank
good.
you.
And he did recommend, I didn't know if we should do this every other year, and he said with the number of restaurants, do it every year. Make
Probably
them
gonna grow.
report their gross sales and look at variances and just make it a yearly effort so they know what to expect and they know how to report accurately.
I promise to keep my finance mouth shut. I'm done.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for everything you do. Next on your agenda is the meals tax, and we just have that one outstanding, which is in litigation. Is that correct? The one that's claimed bankruptcy?
It says in your packet excluding.
We have,
Oh, Madam Clerk on the ball. Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. When I say Madam Treasurer, Madam Treasurer.
Everyone paid as of today.
Beautiful, wonderful. All right. Any
there
questions?
seems to be a recurring problem. Is there a penalty? Was there a penalty paid?
Yes.
Good.
It's like 10%, isn't it?
10% and,
10% penalty and something on interest, I believe. Yeah, very good, very
Good.
good. Street improvements, South Main Street is done. Mission accomplished banner went up recently.
We've still got a punch list here before you. There are some manholes that are not satisfactory, if you didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're shimmies, but they certainly can cause a car to shimmy. We're dissatisfied with at least 2 of the manholes, so I beg them not to come back and dig them up just yet. Let's do them in the spring. And if you look on the punch list, I wanted to bring that to your attention that there's a couple manholes that are going to have to be feathered back in so you don't have such a...
I took some air out of my tires. It's a lot smoother now. It's a lot smoother.
it's
I was
better.
confronted by Mr. Spence. He owns the vacant lot on the corner of Fifth Street, I believe. And there's a pile of gravel there.
It needs to be spread out, or we can take it away or whatever if he
Very
wants it.
simple. It's not, but I'm sure he doesn't have the means to do it.
I think the contractor does have an obligation to take it. If he wants the gravel, by all means, I mean, it's just left over. It's surplus is gonna be taken over to the Brigglesworth and dumped in the parking lot, so whatever. If it's inconvenience, then you're welcome to it. But that is the punch list, and the manholes will be raised or lowered
That's good.
in the spring. And there's not asphalt to be had anyhow right now.
Very good. Church Street, nothing new to report. Wigglesworth,
TEP 21 project, which is sidewalks, antique lights, streetscapes. We're supposed to, and we are scheduled to meet on December 21st for the kickoff meeting, and we hope that will be the case. We expect, we would start it sooner, but I think Dan Martin and his wife would be dissatisfied with the rec association and us competing for time, doing construction with the kids running around. So we may wait until baseball season
July, like
brings to
July.
ahead. Yeah.
Very good. East End Planning Grant.
If Yvonne has anything to share, she's certainly able to, but we do have management team meeting on December 21st to discuss East End and any of the weatherization projects that we have questions on, or Church Street, or
Mr. Taylor? Did something, did you say you had a issue?
Yes, I do. I would need some relief on this utility bill, because I've been out my house for 2 months.
let the record reflect, I assisted Mr. Taylor on his utility bill last month, about $22 already.
Next month, I'm not talking about last month.
Are we talking about weatherization?
Yeah,
Okay. Is that going along okay?
I got an issue with that.
All right, well, after the meeting, we'll be glad to, after the meeting. Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Utility upgrade?
That's the big project wastewater plant. I did speak to Sam Carroll and Randy Jones last week, and we should have a set of drawings in January. They still need to be submitted to state for approval, and then once approved, then I dare say we will begin the process of bidding and seeking contractors.
All right,
Move
listen,
on from ongoing.
Yes.
Wigglesworth, when are we looking at doing the playground finish, or moving playground?
We do not have formal approval from the school board yet. We're on their January agenda. Yep.
Okay.
all right, moving on to new business, delinquent taxes. Is this something we might want to, can we handle this tonight quickly, or you think we must?
I think you can wait if you have questions. I can, it's the same kind of abatement that's being requested for these tax sale properties. The county had them go to tax sale, some were in the town limits, and there were not enough money in the bids to cover the delinquent and the liens that were on the property. I can tell you there was one that I received a letter from Jim Elliott. It's the Vincente Conte Yates property. I believe I've got all of it. He's got several names there. And those taxes have been paid, but I think it was like a $38 lien on the town, but Jim Elliott did send us a letter that they satisfied certainly the county's lien on the taxes.
You're, Mr. Benoit, are you asking council tonight to to abate some of the, do you support the request?
I support the request because they're dead properties. I know them well. Essie Cousins' property, which is over on Church Street, is just growing bamboo, and we're not getting anywhere. So I would note, and I think Eric should note too, that he is the bidder on one of them, which is a grass headache over on Third Street. We cut the grass constantly, and there was an old house that we demolished. I would love to see something else happening there, water, sewer connections, electric, all that sort of thing.
Members of council, what's your
Yeah.
pleasure?
I make a motion that we, abate these taxes.
Motion been made and seconded. I will ask for a roll call vote. Any other questions or concerns?
Just know I'll abstain because
All
one
right,
of the
well-
properties on
I
First.
got a comment.
Yes, Mr. McCure.
I understand, Mr. Novak's, interest in getting these back on the tax roll, getting him out of the grass cutting business, some other things. But it just goes against my grain to see on a consistent basis, the county asking for this, the county selling the property, getting it, and we get nothing out of it. Now, it looks to me like the town is taking a total loss almost every time.
How much money is the town proposing to surrender so much, roughly speaking? I'm looking at the,
$2,000.
how much is it
Roughly $2,000.
on,
4 properties, I
And I'll
think.
tell you, the lot that I have, you'll have 2 duplexes put on it, so you'll make your,
But we're gonna improve, this is gonna improve the lot, and for that reason, I would have to support it. But I just,
I know.
I object that it goes against my grain.
well, if you read some of them, and this, some of them got a bid of $300, and that doesn't even pay for the attorney that the county hired. So the county actually isn't getting a penny, they're actually having to pay the attorney as well.
right.
So
I'm
they're really not-
sympathetic with what you're saying, Mr. Moncur, but Mr. Nash is correct. The county's losing more than we are.
Remember what I said last month with one property? I don't remember, I think it was a house you were gonna tear down and the lady actually asked us. Remember I made this comment about get it, if you've got somebody that's willing or that wants us to tear it down, try right now to get that money. Because guess what, if you don't, it's gonna be right here. And you will never get it.
And these discussions, just so you know, it's gotten better, but I've seen the Board of Supervisors, I kid you not, spend 90 minutes discussing some of the concerns you have, Mr. McCure, about, the principle involved, letting people not, but I think they've learned it's just easier to surrender. And,
These are distressed properties for an obvious reason. I think there was a house that burned down on this cousin property out on Church Street. It's got bamboo growing all over it, and man, these are just properties that are not
We're talking
producing.
about $300 per piece of property of money that we're not gonna get anyway. It's not like we're writing a check for $2,000. It's money we're not gonna get anyway, so.
I will mention that the property that Eric had put the bid on Third Street did have a house on it, and we demolished the house, and that may be some of the cost. If you look, it's about $1,500 abatement, and that would be the lien, I believe, for the demo on the house.
Probably done through what, Church Street project probably?
Most of it was, yeah. And there was another, we tore down 3 houses right there, one on the south side and 2 on the north side of Third Street, so those are the liens that are involved.
Mr. Novak has the floor. Mr. Nash, you're going to abstain on all of them, or just the one in which you have interest? All right, just a matter. We have a motion made by President Thompson. Who seconded it? Mr. Scott seconded the motion.
Real quick, Philip, some of these now that are being brought tax sale, like certain someone that has done this sight unseen, the properties could still stay the same way and we still won't collect anything, correct?
They can stay the same way,
They won't do anything and we'll have to.
and we've got one on Fall Street that we're still cutting the grass on. If you remember, there was a fellow that bought a house over on Dillard Street. Remember that haunted house that was over there we tore down?
Tore down, and that guy still, we can still cut the grass for him, he bought it at the tax sale and we still cut the
But we do have a lien on it for the demolition of the house.
So this could happen with some of these properties.
Sure. Good point, Madam Clerk.
Yeah.
Very good
Well,
point.
that's what reason, just gnaws at me to do this.
And we see it. I can tell, I feel it. I feel it. But I share your concerns, but I think that in the interest of moving forward, I think the motion is a good one.
I do have a question.
Yes.
And Mr. Nash, I know this is not a huge issue, but would you feel better if we pull that one out? And you just,
You can
okay.
do them all at once.
I would
It's a
appreciate
thing from all of
it, I would appreciate that courtesy if it was me, so that's what I'm extending you. I'd be glad to make a substitute motion, pull this out if you wanted to participate, okay?
All right, so Ms. Thompson's original motion will stand. I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Thompson.
Aye.
Abstain.
That motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. Moving along to the inoperative vehicles. This sounds like a warning to, where are we?
Resident reimbursement.
Oh, we have a reimbursement request from a resident of Tavern Street where apparently did our sanitation people take something by mistake?
There was a bag of clothes on the back porch, and baby went out with the bathwater, and the garbage men agreed, yeah, we took it. Yeah, we didn't know what it was. It was a bag of garbage, we thought, and the property owner disputes that and says, no, these were still valuable clothes, and she's asking for a reimbursement of $164.
It's very reasonable because I'd have probably had a Rolex watch in there.
I'm not discrediting, but is it where trash typically is?
Well, we pick up trash on people's porches, and that is the magic of Blackstone. We do that, and that's a rarity, and I think it's a service that people like, and
That's why we should have trash pickup at the street.
Curbside.
Sure.
sure.
Who wants to make a motion to do something Christmassy on Tavern
To
Street?
approve of the reimbursement for $164.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I just want to ask, did we think about getting our insurance carrier involved, or?
We have $500 deductible on most liability-type claims.
I think, the thing that I like about it is it's reasonable.
It's very reasonable.
and It's Christmas, but I just worry about what's gonna happen in the future, so should we, is there anything?
Well,
just
we
hope
paid
this
for some
doesn't-
lawnmower parts not too long ago. I think Mr. Epps got a new pan for his lawnmower, and
We had an
We got a tire
employee-
episode. We had a tire episode one time.
Employee in General District Court, I mean, let's put this on the radar screen,
And I know we can't
tough
ask
subject.
our trash guys to look in every bag
No.
and check.
But we
because-
can't ask them to go on little old ladies' porches and they do it. So
Yeah,
it's really I'm just saying, I think this is the hall pass. Next time we're gonna have to make changes.
I tend to think probably that crew may be leery of, they're gonna say, where they pick up this, they're gonna probably.
no, they don't pick up tires. I can be sure of that.
Right.
So they're
Very
very
good,
cautious.
very good. That motion passed 7-0. And moving along to the inoperable vehicles, this sounds like a warning to the people of Blackstone.
Heads up, guys. We did grass. Grass is done for the year, and cars. So people know if it is on the public right-of-way, and believe it or not, most streets in Blackstone are particularly wide, 50, 70 feet, not just on the pavement, but if it's on the public right-of-way, it's 4 days to remove it, okay? And it'll be handled by the police department. Jennifer will take a picture, we'll give it to the police department, and the police department will give the property owner, or the personal property owner, 4 days to remove it, okay? If it's on private property, then we send a notice to the property owner, and if that doesn't get resolved, then we go back and look at the VIN number and make a second attempt to get it. But if it's on the public right-of-way, which we have a bunch recently that we took pictures of, heads up. So we're going to be pressing that a little bit here in the next few months.
That takes pictures. Does she send notice to the property owner?
Typically, we send a certified letter to the property owner.
Okay, that doesn't mean the
Because
occupant
we
of the
can't
home.
keep track of all the occupants. but
Yeah.
It goes to the property owner, and usually the property owners don't want the police involved, so they go ahead and make these people, and that's pretty quick. So I'm making lots of friends this year with grass and cars.
Didn't come with the job,
Yum.
she did. Mr. Benorbeck, and the law also is if it's sitting in my yard and it's not enclosed, that's also in violation. Used to be, if you tarped it, you were good, but it's gotta be enclosed and
And
You
a
know.
cart does not count.
correct.
Tarp doesn't count, so it's got to
You
be
got
a.
more time on those, don't you? You got like 60 days or 30 days?
30 days.
Yeah, that's where the longer letters, 30 days, and then if we can't get a hold,
Yeah, people are chirping about the junk cars.
oh, they're everywhere. Yeah, no doubt. And so we're working on them pretty hard, so heads up. If you know anybody that's got one, 4 days if it's on the right of way, and if it's parked out in front of the house, most likely it's on the public right of way.
Whether it's in a business district or not.
I think the last time we went over this, Tessie did say that grass it applies there, and that the cars have to be licensed unless it's a certified junkyard or repair
Manufacturer-
shop or something.
Well, how about, wait a minute, how about
It's specified in the ordinance.
just hypothetically, let's say Billy had a towing station on North Main Street. It had 40 cars, it looked unsightly, but I'm zoned general business. Am I in compliance or non-compliance?
My personal opinion is that you would be compliant because, one, if we're talking about Watts, and I've run into this in the past few years, and you guys probably heard some hollering, I can't physically go on someone's property, nor can Jennifer Daniel. We do not have police powers to check, okay? I think that something like a tow business, and I'm not giving you an app,
Well, an auto repair place, or a
clear
place that fixes cars.
Well, there's several over there at Rick's, and I would say that they have to be resolved. You just can't, because Rick's is not certified as a junkyard or salvage yard. I think any of those kinds of places. Remember the guy that was doing auto repair at Community Convenience? his position was, why are you telling me to get rid of my two? And Rick's got some over next door. So I think everybody has a responsibility to have them tagged unless they're a certified salvage yard, yeah. I think that they would need to.
Good luck, town staff.
Oh, yeah, it's a mess.
Metal's not bringing anything either, is it? Metal's not bringing anything either. No.
Moving right along, next on your agenda is a resolution. I get a request from an organization, and I've done it for the last several years. It's a proclamation declaring a week in January as School Choice Week in Blackstone, Virginia. It's benign, non-political.
Do you want the council to make this
I'd
resolution?
like council to authorize me to sign it. I just feel comfortable.
Do you want council to make the resolution, or do you want to do it as mayor?
I will do it with mayor and have the president of council sign it as well.
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded to sign the resolution, add President Thompson's signature as well. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. I brought up issue number 5. I don't want this to sound critical, and it's, I actually had to remind myself, I think Sea Park especially looks awesome. The Christmas wreaths we have now were bought in 2001, and I just noticed that some of them are worn because they've been displayed for so many years. And I also noticed, and y'all might remember, I wasn't the biggest LED light fan in January. I am now. They look great, and people are complimenting. Is it time? And it may not be just the town's council's role, but there's 50-some wreaths where the Christmas lights don't match the LED. Am I being hyper picky? Might it be something we do in a 10 at a time each year?
Didn't we have that conversation?
I had actually discussed this weekend with my parents, and I would personally like to see no wreaths or anything on the poles unless, as the town, take it on themselves. Let's outline the buildings, and that's your decoration on the streets instead, on the tops of the buildings, and do away with the poles.
I got a question. When I started working here in 2011, there was a budget item for Christmas wreaths or Christmas ornaments.
We did bows. We bought bows for the wreaths.
Yeah.
The bows were actually becoming orange.
Told you.
I was having an argument with Field at a ball game the other day, and I said, I know we bought something, but
I've already asked him to put this in the budget
Okay.
for council's consideration.
All right. Can we just talk Christmas decorations in January, just so maybe, and again, town's crew's awesome job. I mean, I've had people from all over say Blackstone Sea Park looks better.
The lights do.
It does. I just don't, I think maybe next Christmas would be nice to maybe do some, those wreaths are getting kind of worn. And the other thing, this was brought to me by a constituent, and I'm ashamed to say I ride over it all the time. At the 5K run at the Arts and Crafts Festival, which Kinston Forest helped organize, there are spray painted areas in the road that I always think is going to wear off. But one of my constituents has made it clear that they're not fading. Is there anything we can do, on a slow day?
Oh, to paint over?
Maybe on January 2nd?
is that the issue, to get rid of them?
Or just do you want to, does council
Or
want to
begin
erase
using
them or
chalk.
make sure it doesn't happen again?
Begin using chalk. I mean, that's-
Right, because apparently this is permanent paint in the road.
I think the chalk is probably the idea, tell you the truth. Go in there with something that's less durable. We can cover over them. I'm sure we can find black paint to cover over them.
One of my constituents is very annoyed, and, I thought I'd pass along, and
Well, if there's
I
another,
did.
if there's another race, it may be confusing. They may go.
Exactly. All right, thank y'all, very good. Thank you for, Madam Clerk?
I pulled up the inoperative vehicle ordinance here.
Yes.
An exception is, the provisions of this section shall not apply to any business duly licensed to deal in the buying, selling, storing, or disassembling of motor vehicles, trailers, or semi-trailers, or the temporary storage of motor vehicles, trailers, or semi-trailers awaiting repairs, or any motor vehicle, trailer, or semi-trailer which is designed or used primarily for agriculture or horticultural purposes, and which is kept upon a farm or other property principally used for such purposes. So that's an
Covers
exception.
everything.
So I don't hear auto repair place in there. I hear junkyard in
Yeah,
there.
it said auto repair.
Did it say auto repair?
Sound
License
like
to deal in the
Ricky and I
buying,
just got a,
selling, storing, or disassembling of motor vehicles.
Disassembling, okay.
Ricky and I just
No, the
got a
next
hall
section
pass,
said
that's what that says.
Okay. As long as when we go out and,
Trailers or semi-trailers awaiting repair.
okay, excellent, all right.
So that covers.
And it even mentioned farm equipment, which is obviously a, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's important if we go out and marching as to war, that we have the right cause. Moving right along, folks, I added number 6, playground equipment. My mayor's meeting on November the 29th, Eddie Schniff sent me a very heartfelt Facebook message. Basically, and I told him we're working on the playground, but he was frustrated, why can't Blackstone have a playground? And I told him we've had a playground, we've had a hard time keeping it from being vandalized. But I wanted you to see his note, and we are moving forward on that, correct? Yes. All right, very good. Moving right along. The bus budget, this is an annual local appropriation and approval of the overall budget. Josh Worrell.
He's seeking approval to present this
Okay.
to the state. Is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, I need town council's approval before I can apply to the state.
Is
Okay.
it costing the town any additional money this year?
It is due because we retained Janet Matthews when she retired as a part-time position. There's that additional expense.
At what cost, do we know?
50, isn't it? 50,000 total.
About $14,000 additional.
So it was about 36.
It was 37,411 last year. It's 50,406 this year.
So we'll have to find that in this coming year's budget.
Correct. And we're also last year we bought 2 buses, by 3 buses this year. So it's all fairly benign.
Okay.
I move to approve his request.
Mr. Green has moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Nash is second. Any further discussion? I will ask for a roll call vote simply because it does involve spending more than $10,000, starting with President Thompson.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Under committee referrals, the town manager wants me to refer the airport master agreement. That would be logically to the airport committee.
Abstain.
I have no other committee reports. I will say under mayor's minute, I mentioned previously, we haven't done goals in a while because a lot of our goals have basically been getting the finances in order, which I continue to commend staff and council for that. I did hear some overwhelming themes. I'd like to ask staff if you could explore the following with some sort of report, maybe January or February. One is, could we have some either proposal or explanation as to why we will or why we won't pursue plastic recycling? We hash it out pretty good at the meeting, but I would like to have something to hang our hat on because we may find something that might be
Let's have figures.
figures, and I would like to include a letter if we could send a formal letter to the county, letting them know that we are trying to take efforts to save space in the county-owned landfill. Because Mr. Hasbrook was very passionate, and he pointed out about saving the landfill space, and I just said simply, I agree, but it's not the town landfill, it's the county landfill. The other issue that came up, and this may involve spending some money, but it may be a myth, but I take everybody at their word. I think maybe we should try, this council, the town, devising some sort of welcome packet, whether it's a brochure, it'd be put out to bid, to the lowest bid to print it, to prepare for. I think there's a general feeling out there that we, including this mayor, are not getting proactive for FAST-C. And my answer, and I said it at the meeting, is that I've told the State Department people, when those employees are told they have the option to come to Blackstone, I want to be the guy to tell them the Blackstone story. They assure me that those employees, those positions have not been identified yet. But I just think maybe we had something to hang our hat on, a FAST-C packet.
Amazingly, you did not call me about this today, but Josh and I talked about our internship program, and we looked at our 2013 goals, and one of them is to prepare a packet for Welcome to Blackstone. In order to have an intern, there were a couple things we clarified. Josh, we're going to advertise for an intern. I think you sent the ad. The second thing was we wanted to make sure it wasn't just a town manager's shadow. We wanted them to spend time with Dan and Jennifer, everybody, and understand what's going on, and they have to have a project. What's the one thing that they can provide to the town in exchange for that? And it came right off your goals, which was to provide a Welcome to Blackstone packet, and that will be one of the things that the intern will have to do this year.
And my last thing on Mayor's Minute, and these are questions that came from people, and I usually give my opinion, but the council's opinion is more important than mine. One of the questions I asked was, what is the town's plan, or what is our policy about preventing empty buildings? And I said, basically, we work with DBI, cheerleads for downtown, promotes downtown. There is no formal policy by this council on, we've talked enterprise zones before, that sort of thing. So I wanted council to just sort of think about, other than we hope and pray for good times and try to keep downtown clean, is there anything the council feels could be done to prevent empty buildings? It's probably not a function of government because people have to sell their own, have to be successful. But those are the 3 highlights I thought of the meeting, and I appreciate those who did come to that meeting. There's about 25 people there. So we could put those 3 issues on the January and maybe even the February agenda. I'd appreciate it.
If I may, in order for us to complete the closing for the garage or town shop,
Yes.
those of you familiar with the title insurance, that will underwrite and cover the purchase of the town shop, has asked that Tessie bring back to council a resolution, and she can make an explanation, but in order for the title insurance not to have an exception on certain portions of the policy, just a motion is not acceptable. They want actually a resolution. We did have the public hearings. We did everything we typically do, but I think the title policy underwriter is requesting this resolution.
I move to approve the resolution presented and
It's at y'all's desk.
have the mayor execute a signature as soon as possible.
Is there a second? Give that to Mr. Tucker. We have about 3 seconds. Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call. This is basically finalizing, Mr. Van Wyck, this is basically finalizing the sale of the Old Town Shop, which could take place.
It shall take place before the 31st of December.
And one just quick sidebar question, do we know anything, really not our business, but do we know anything, there was talk of the Trump tax plan jeopardizing historic tax incentives. Do we know anything about that?
I don't know what this final, that came out of conference.
Right.
Addresses on the tax plan, but what Mr. McCormick was aware of and familiar with was you had to be closed, he had to have ownership of the building prior to December 31st, thus the end of the year, and construction in some form, and what would be satisfactory, I don't know, had to be started by the month of June. Either the
Okay.
beginning or the end of June. I've not heard anything to the contrary, but I do think it's tough on a project like UMAC or something like that, if that indeed is the case, but there's winners and losers in every bit of
Sure,
legislation. but,
sure.
That is still the case.
Motion's been made, and, Madam Clerk, do we vote on this?
You haven't voted, but your motion is.
Roll call vote, starting with President Thompson.
Abstain.
Abstaining. That motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. At this time, you will notice, members of the public, we have a second opportunity for citizen comments. Any questions or concerns on anything that was discussed tonight? I see Mr. Tom Taylor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I speak on my, that winter disease,
Yes, sir.
I don't get it. My house is pounding down.
Would you mind coming to the podium just so?
No, okay. No, my house is pounding down. Don't send no payment book to me. I'm not gonna do anything till my house gets fixed up. Have a Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much. Anyone else tonight who would like to speak? We have a closed session, I believe.